Hello everyone and welcome back to Venus. We are currently on day 1128 and we have moved over to the new terrain here and I found a great little place for the base in Faith Valley. And I haven't really shown off the base too much from the outside, I realized. So I thought that would be a great place to start today's episode. And I place it the way I have. The base is located where it is because I have some plans for the runway for the traders at some point. So I wanted to leave plenty of space for it. But yeah, let's do a quick look around the base before we start the main topic of today's episode. And if you have been following the series, you should probably recognize most of the base from the inside. But I started this base with the idea that I wanted to build around a trading, a landing platform, a trading post. So that's what I started designing. So that's why we have this in the center, and the base is more or less built around it. And most of this side isn't really changed, although I have started padding the walls outside, and even though it looks really clean right now, if I turn on my goggles, you can see that there is pipes and cables absolutely everywhere. But yeah, most of this side of the base is more or less the same, but on the back side here I had to expand because in the old terrain the base was leaning up against a mountain, and now that I moved it here there wasn't really a mountain hitting the back of the base anymore, so I did a bit of expanding back here, although I haven't fully connected it to the base yet and it's still just hot Venus atmosphere in there. But you can clearly see I have some plans for a rocket silo and a rover garage and stuff like that, but we're not really gonna spend any time on that this episode. So let's head inside and start today's episode. And in the last video we talked through how my new base atmospherics works, and today's episode is still gonna be about base atmospherics. We are actually gonna set up something similar, although a bit smaller and less complex. And I ended last episode saying that I would complete the composter room and set up a lot of swift grass production, because we still need to produce more nitrogen here. I still rely on the Venus atmosphere for nitrogen, but I would really like to get rid of the last filtration units and be fully self-reliant. And I did all that. As you could see, I did complete the composter room, and I actually also filled this section of the base with swiftgrass production. And then I realized that the base atmospherics up there just wasn't really capable of handling all that extra nitrogen and hydrogen production. So I tore it down and I moved the swiftgrass production here. It's not up and running yet. And the reason is that I decided to move the composter room down here, which I haven't done yet, but that's the plan, to put all the composters from upstairs and put them into this room. And then here we have the topic of today's video, which is a separate filtration unit just for the composter output. Because I'm thinking that if I filter all the composter output here, it will relieve a lot of load on the main base filtration unit. And it will also, by moving the composters down here, it will give me extra room to expand that one. So that's pretty much what we're going to do today. This setup is just built, but absolutely everything is empty. I haven't set it up yet, and that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna do it live with you and take you through every step of making this thing work. And yeah, that's pretty much the entire video today. So before we start, let's quickly talk through what we're looking at. the setup is essentially divided in two. We have the top section and the bottom section. The top section is intended to be a pollutant heat pump. So essentially a phase change heat pump, which you might have seen others do. This one will be primarily, this will do pollutant and be essentially just a regular heat pump and transfer heat. And then at the bottom section is where the filtration is actually going to happen. We have this pipe here, which I said is still empty, but I have a sneaky connection here to the composter atmosphere upstairs. So this comes from the composters upstairs, and I have temporarily just routed this pipe through the base, and it's coming all the way down here. And we are going to pipe that into here and hopefully split the hydrogen and nitrogen into separate nitrogen and hydrogen lines. And these pipes here goes just back. This is the nitrogen network in my base, and this is the hydrogen network in my base. And the top section is a fairly standard heat pump, which is going to run on pollutant. The reason we have this heat pump is because the filtration system down there needs some help running itself. Even though the cross-flow, counterflow heat exchangers down here help us a lot, some heat will always get lost. These are not 100%, so we need a heat pump simply to compensate for the imperfection in the filtration system. And what we are looking at here is a fairly typical heat pump, although I'm not a fan of using the phase change devices. I use alternative devices instead. And on this end, we have this pipe right here, which is the compressor or the condensation chamber. I guess it's simply just a pipe, nothing fancy with it. And it's connected to these three heat exchangers, which removes heat to the winter spawn room. That yellow pipe is the winter spawn room atmosphere. So that's how this pipe is cooled down. We have the turbo pump here, which essentially will, grab a pollutant and put it in here and pressurize it, and eventually it will condense. And we have two condensation valves underneath here, which will take all that liquid and move it all the way back through. And it will end up, I can't click on this pipe just yet, but it will essentially end up in this portable tank, which makes an excellent evaporation chamber. So think of this just as an evaporation chamber. And we'll look at this, this liquid side. Just know that it connects straight over, and we'll look at what it connects to in a bit. But the gas side connects to the gas side on the portable tank, just connects back through, and it goes all the way back. And we'll talk about this one shortly. So let's look at the liquid pipe here. And we can see that it connects to the last cross-flow heat exchanger. It connects to the portable tank. It also connects there. We'll also talk about that a bit later. And then it goes down here and it connects to these two heat exchangers. And the rest of the things down here is for the filtration system itself. So this is just how we keep the filtration cold, is by connecting to that liquid pipe on the pollutant heat pump. Let's also quickly talk through what the filtration system here does. We'll end up getting the nitrogen and volatile mix into this pipe right here, and this pipe is connected to both the cross-flow heat exchanger rows, and they will split approximately 50-50, and then it will connect through both of these pretty equally. These two rows are more or less equally built and join back here to this pipe. This is where we will expect most of the condensation of the filtered gases to happen, and this lonely condensation valve here will take all of that liquid into this liquid pipe. The portable tank in between here is primarily functioning as a temperature bridge. I mean, some of these gases will go into the portable tank and condense there. It doesn't really matter where it condenses. The main purpose of this portable tank specifically is just to be a temperature bridge, because it will equalize the liquids with the liquid side and the gases with the gas side, and thus this gas side and liquid pipe will hold more or less exactly the same temperature thanks to this portable tank. And then once we have our hydrogen and nitrogen liquefied, it will be in this pipe. And again, we have something up here. We'll talk about that a bit later. It isn't really that important. We have the same thing with this one. But this liquid pipe then connects directly to the first portable tank connector. We are obviously going to have portable tanks on these as well, but just for ease of access, I haven't put them in here yet. But the pipe is connected to the first one, and I can take off these walls so that you get a better look of what's happening behind it. There's nothing fancy, just another heat exchanger.
Hydration critical.
And my hydration is clearly critical. But the pipe connects to this side, and then we have these double one-way valves, which will let flow go over to this one. The reason it's doubled is because we might have gas pressure building up here, which we don't want to be out of control. That's why the one-way valve is going back. Primarily, I'm expecting gases to only flow in this direction, and it connects to the other portable tank. And the reason we have two, these will be evaporation chambers, just like the one we had up there, where we hopefully evaporate volatiles on this side and nitrogen on this side. And thanks to the composter output being 50-50, I'm expecting the outputs here to be, even though it's pure hydrogen here and pure nitrogen there, thanks to the gas mix being exactly 50-50 out of the composters, that will match the 50-50 we had on the input gas. So they will run all the way back through and get pumped into their respective systems. And you might have noticed that the hydrogen gas line here is also connected to the other side of this large heat exchanger. And that's the reason for the heat exchanger is because the hydrogen side is somewhat disconnected. This will simply just cool down a lot when the hydrogen is evaporating in here, and we want to use that loss of energy to cool the rest of the system as well. When the nitrogen evaporates, that will, thanks to the portable tank connector, just help cool everything. Like evaporating nitrogen here will cool the content of the portable tank, which will in turn cool this liquid pipe, which will in turn cool this portable tank, which will cool where the gas pipe, where all the condensation is happening. So for the filtration side, the condensation and evaporation should in theory cancel each other out. The hydrogen is connected for a very good reason, and for that, and because it's disconnected in this way, we don't really reclaim that loss of energy without this big heat exchanger. Even though this system right here is a lot smaller and simpler than the one we built upstairs, you can't just turn a system like this on and expect it to work. We can't just flip a switch and it's operating. We have to carefully initiate it step by step for it to do what we expect it to do. So the first step of that is to fill the heat pump with pollutant. And in this space there is very few places, almost none, where I can extract pure pollutant. But there is one place, and luckily it's just behind this wall. And that's this step here. Like in the last episode we talked through the entire basin. We are now in the stirling room where we get all the dirty gases the base is creating, and the first step of the filtration actually starts. But by the time we arrive here, we have eliminated most of the water and we're trying to eliminate most of the pollutant, and as you can see we also catch a bit of nitrous oxide. But that pipe drains into this pipe right here, and in this pipe there is plenty of liquids, but there's only one gas which will evaporate, and that is pollutant. So I have just continued that pipe over here to a purge valve, and we can turn that on and it will keep draining the pollutant in here and fill our tank with it. Now, we're not producing a ton of pollutant through that one pipe, but it's a decent chunk, and if we give this a little bit of time, I'm sure it will fill up eventually. At this temperature we're currently pulling it in at, I would expect at least a few megapascals before we actually can start running the heat pump efficiently. Alright, so we have about 3.6 megapascals in this tank right now, and even though I want a lot more eventually in here, the feeding system I'm using will struggle to deliver more pollutant at this pressure. So I think it's time to start up the heat pump here, and because I've been feeding the gases in this side, all the pipes through here will also have been filled, so we have 3.6 through the entire gas side here. So I think it's time to start it up, and I think I'll just run it manually for a little bit, and 10 liters is probably fine. So we have to do two things here. First of all, we have to fill the liquid side as well, but we also need to cool down this tank because we are separating and liquefying nitrogen and volatiles. This pollutant side, this cold side on the pollutant heat pump, will need to hit negative 95 degrees at minimum. But as we could see, we already had liquids. Let's have a peek on the condensation chamber or condensation pipe on this side. And yeah, it's heating up, but also, well, it's actually cooling down. Yeah, it's cooling down thanks to the heat exchangers, but also condensating. And yeah, we're getting a bit of liquids, so we're getting liquids through the whole system here. Now I like to aim for about 10% liquid volume, between 10 and 15%. Which means that I need at least 79 liters of liquid pollutants in here. So we have a long way to go still. But yeah, as this cools down, a lot of the gases will just turn liquid. Yeah, this can chug along for a bit, because we have to do something else as well once we have started this. And yeah, I'm just keeping an eye on it. It looks to be running just fine. But with a heat pump setup like this, a common problem here is that if you look at this liquid pipe, we end up having evaporation, and we have evaporation all the in-between steps. And once our pollutant gets cold enough, we will actually start to see condensation happening on the cold side, while still having evaporation on the hot side. And ideally, we want the counterflow heat exchangers to do their job the way it's intended to do, and swap the temperatures between the gas coming this way and the liquids going back. So ideally, we don't really want any phase change happening in these liquid pipes at all. And the same way, we don't have any phase change in the gas side, right? But that's not a problem. That won't happen anyway. But the liquid evaporating here is a killer to the efficiency. So we want to eliminate that. And that's where this mysterious white pipe comes in. And I'll run down so we get a better look at it. It's a pipe that isn't really connected to anything. It has a purge valve on this end, on the gas side, and it just runs all the way back and just hits a pressure valve on this side. So what this pipe is, it's empty right now, as everything else is. We are going to put some oxygen in this pipe and use that as a pressurant, and then fill the liquid pipe through the cross-flow heat exchangers with the oxygen to keep the pollutant from doing any sort of phase change shenanigans. So yeah, let me get some pipes, and while I'm at it, I hopefully have some valves. I do not have some valves. I'll get that, but I think we can do without for now. We need to put some oxygen in this pipe, and luckily my oxygen network, my base oxygen network, is just right up here. So we can do some temporary pipe connections, and I'll do it on this side and equal it right there. Should be correct. And before I connect it, let's have a quick look at it. We have 23.5 megapascals of oxygen. As you can tell, pure oxygen, which primarily runs to my water and fuel production. But let's connect this right there. And we might need to connect that back up in case we spend all the oxygen. You can see we now have oxygen in that buffer pipe, I should say. And we can set up this. Let's see, yeah. And I'd like to do 4,800 on that. And then that will start to fill the liquid network with oxygen, which will just naturally flow through. And the reason we have this purge valve is simply because the pressure on this side, when the system, especially when the system is, starting running, initializing, we might have some temperature changes in this pipe, and that can cause a pressure overload in the liquid pipe. So the oxygen, when it comes back here, it doesn't really have anywhere to go, because it won't go into the portable tank. It will basically just sit in this pipe. So just as a safety precaution, this purge valve is here. And we can set that to slightly higher. So let's do 4,850. At 4,900, you start to get pipe cracking sounds. So I like to keep just below that. But that should be safe enough to start right now. I might actually wait until the pollutant is fully condensed. It's not a big issue if we get, some trace amount of pollutant in here, but if you can avoid it, let's try to. So if we look at the liquid pipe here now, well, it's still a good chunk of pollutant in here, and it's still evaporating. Probably because I ran out of oxygen. Not yet, but it's getting low. It eats a lot of oxygen when we initially fill up the liquid pipe. But when the system is fully running and fairly stable, then the oxygen buffer pipe here isn't really used, and the valves can be permanently shut off. But during initialization, the pressure might swing a bit, so it's nice to have the pressurant valve and the purge valve. So as you can see, with with enough oxygen, the pollutant almost completely disappears, and when it does, we will have no phase change in these pipes at all. And that will help the counterflow heat exchangers do their actual job. There we go. No more pollutant evaporating, no more pollutant gas. And yeah, still a few moles left on the end here. But as you can tell, we do not get any oxygen in the gas tank. That's because on the liquid connector it only equalizes with the liquids. The temperature is dropping fairly rapidly in this tank, and even though we are far from our target of at least 79 liters of liquids, I'm a bit afraid to leave this without managing it, because it might end up freezing the pipes. We're aiming for a temperature very close to pollutant freezing, so I think it's a good time, while we wait anyway, to set up some logic. And I have already prepared IC wall right here, and I have a chip which has some old program on it. And let's see, this is for something completely different. We can clear that out. I already have a program ready for this, and that's because I have something very similar upstairs, so I've just been snatching that code. And what we're looking at here is essentially a PI controller aiming for 178 Kelvin. There is an added feature in this, in that if it drops below 173, which is the freezing temperature of pollutant, it just kills the integral part of the PI controller. That's just a safety feature. And this subsection here is to control the pressure valve and the purge valve. So let's smack that up and see what it needs. It needs a volume pump, that's the turbo pump we have over there, and then a pipe analyzer, and a pressure valve, and a purge valve. Now the pipe analyzer is right up here, so we can start with that, and we can name it and call it LPA Pollutant. There we go. And let's run and name the other things as well. Let's start with the pump. Let's call this turbo volume pump pollutant loop. And double checking my spelling. There we go. And let's have a quick look at the temperature while we run past it. Yeah, it's dropping fairly fast, so it will be nice to have this automated. Let's name this as well and call it Pressurant on the pollutant pipe, and Purge on the pollutant pipe. There we go. And yeah, let's get a screwdriver and pin this. Turbo volume pump should be on T, so we have to smash the mouse button. That's the one. And then liquid pipe analyzer should be on L. Liquid pipe analyzer, yeah. And then pressurant. So that's P, pressurant pollutant, and purge valve pollutant. There we go. No, that's the one we want. Let's turn that on. And you can see it actually ramped up for a bit here. So the cooling should actually speed up for a bit. But as soon as this hits around the -95, it should calm down and settle down. We're still about halfway from our target of at least 10% liquid volume. So I'm still gonna run the feeding valve here a bit more and wait until we get closer to the target liquid ratio. I left it running for a few minutes, and as you can tell, we are about 1 degree off of freezing it, and that's just the type of margins we're playing with here. It's razor thin margins on most of these things, but it being super cold isn't really a problem, because now we are moving down to the filtration system, and we are going to introduce a lot of heat to it. And yeah, before we start to introduce the actual nitrogen and volatiles we are going to filter, we are first going to do the pressure and gas on this side. It's essentially the same thing we did up here with the oxygen, and we have a separate pipe for this. It's over here, and it's not connected to anything like the other white pipe. This is just a buffer tank of sorts for oxygen to be the pressure and gas for the pink pipe network here. So we need to introduce oxygen and then start to pressurize this. I want this pink pipe pressurized before we start to introduce the nitrogen and volatiles. But pressurizing this means that we are going to introduce a lot of warm oxygen, which needs to be cooled down. So that will be interesting. For the time being, I think I will change this pipe, this valve here, to a levered one-way valve, because I don't really want that oxygen to flow over here just yet while it's still hot. So let's find some oxygen, and I think we're gonna grab the oxygen from the same place, but now we need it all the way over here. So let's grab some more pipes and build a very, very temporary pipe length here just to fill this up with oxygen. Alright, there we go. And as I said, this is very temporary. These oxygen buffer pipes will be fairly stable and will not need refilling once we get everything up and running. But for right now, this pipe has to probably stay for a bit. I made sure to get a valve kit, and we are gonna slap a one-way valve here, and then just let that fill up with oxygen. Yeah, that's a lot of oxygen. And then we'll very slowly and carefully start to fill this this pipe. And it almost immediately jumped to -93 degrees. Let's carefully increase this pressure. Yeah. Let's try a megapascal. Yeah, and it's still cooling down fairly quick. I don't want to introduce it too fast, because it might end up jump scaring the heat pump too much. And we're still not at 10% liquid volume here, so a bit more to go. And there we have a nicely pressurized pipe with cold oxygen. And now that it's pressurized and cold, we can open this back up and let this other side also get pressurized. There we go. And now that the liquid pipe here is nicely pressurized. I think we can start to actually pump in some of the volatiles and nitrogen here. And we are not gonna be greedy. We are gonna set this to 0.5 and start the pumping there. That will give us a slow and steady flow into the system. We really don't want to shock it too much. And we can see that the nitrogen and volatiles here are gathering in the condensation pipe at the end, and they are cooling down slightly, but it's clearly not keeping up. The pollutant pipe isn't struggling too bad, but the temperature is increasing. I think our pump can deal with that. Once some of this starts to liquefy, we will end up benefiting from this portable tank. But until it does, it really doesn't do anything, and we are essentially only utilizing this single heat exchanger right now. But yeah, these gases doesn't start to condense until a few more megapascals, and I don't want to pump any faster because it will just overload the cooling. So I think I will even pump a bit slower and wait until the pressure has built up enough. And there we go, we have condensation of volatiles. And it's still just a tiny amount, but now that we start to have some liquids, the liquids will, it will equalize with this oxygen pipe, or the liquid pipe with oxygen in it, and we finally start to utilize this extra large heat exchanger as well. That will certainly speed things up. And we can see that we start to get quite a bit of volatiles in here, but the temperature is also jumping a bit. So I think it's time to pause the feed for a bit, or maybe we should just turn it all the way down. 0.1 should be fine for a bit, I think. The reason we now tune it down is because as volatile is condensing in this pipe and transferring to the liquid pipe, that will end up leaving more space for more gas to start falling through here and refilling that volatile. But yeah, we have right now we have pure volatiles as a liquid, so you might think that it's a perfect time to put on a portable tank here and start condensing volatiles. And in theory could have done that, but that's actually a bit of a trap, because we have a long process ahead of us, and we need to introduce the nitrogen before we start doing that. Once the nitrogen starts to condense, it will essentially contaminate this pipe, and we need to carefully control the evaporation situations here to make sure we get pure nitrogen and mostly pure volatile. So for right now, it's simply just waiting and slowly filling up. Again, I'm waiting for about 10% liquid capacity here as well, but once we put the tanks on here, that will add a lot of liquid volume, and I think actually we can start to introduce the tanks already, and at least the volatile one we can set it on. so that we get that liquid volume. And you see the volatile hail will start to evaporate quite rapidly, which will cause everything else to cool down fairly rapidly. And that's thanks to this large heat exchanger back here, that this doesn't cool out of control. It doesn't cool our oxygen to condensation, and it helps alleviate the pressure on the condensation here. So you can see this is dropping as well right now. And now we suddenly have nitrogen condensing as well. And if we look at the liquid pipe, you can see that the ratio of nitrogen is raising up here. It's increasing fairly quickly, despite our feeding pump still being at a very tiny 0.1 liters. And whenever we get nitrogen in here, we will obviously also get nitrogen in there. But that's, well, intentional, or at least by design. We will never get a fully pure volatiles line, but we are gonna get it at least 99% pure. But we are at least aiming for a absolutely fully pure, sorry, did I say wrong? We can't get a fully pure volatiles line, but at least 99% pure. But the trade-off here is that we will at least get a fully pure nitrogen line. But to get that all running, I still just need a lot more liquids. So I'm still running this, you know, at snail's pace here, super slow and super careful. And that's intentional. I do not want to overstress the system, because right now we are essentially just sending mass one way. The counterflow heat exchangers are not helping us as the slightest bit, because we are not evaporating anything going the other way around. We are also really not evaporating anything at all. So we need to, the pollutant heat pump up there has to compensate for both bringing a lot of mass down to this temperature, but also compensate for all the condensation, which I mentioned earlier, that the condensation energy should cancel out with the evaporation energy, but that only happens once we start to actually evaporate anything. For the time being, we are simply just filling this pipe and building up mass, which means that we have to get rid of all that condensation energy, and as well as just bringing a lot of mass down to this temperature. So that's why this is going super slow, and I'm doing it very carefully. It's about an hour later, and the liquid pipe is starting to fill up, but we still have one more portable tank to place down. So I think I want to place that now, before the liquid ratio builds up too much. And simply because any change we're doing here is gonna kind of shock the system a bit. So I want to get it fairly early. And yeah, all that liquid now rushing into the tank, causing evaporation in the tank, causing everything to cool down a lot. And then we have to repressurize with more oxygen. But we're not freezing the pollutant, so I think that didn't go too bad. But you could clearly tell what I mean by a shock, right? Because as soon as I plonked the tank on, we had a rush of mass going every which direction and evaporation and a huge temperature swing. So I'm glad we got that done. And now we need to wait for the pipe to fill back up. Alright, it's a few hours later and the liquid volume in this pipe is starting to build up. It's not quite where I would like it. I'm still aiming for about 10%, but it's close enough that we can start the actual filtration system, I think. If we have a look at the first portable tank here, you can see that right now only nitrogen is in gaseous form here, and even the first pipe is pure nitrogen. But when we look down the line, we can see that it's a very high ratio of volatiles. And equally, if we look at the hydrogen tank, we can see that it has a high ratio of nitrogen in it. So right now it's not actually filtered, and we have to do something about that. So we're not really ready to start pumping this into the actual nitrogen and hydrogen networks in the base. First, we need to have some temporary pipes here, and I'm gonna do them in orange. And let's see here. There we go. And what we're gonna do is simply to short these the outputs right back to where it came from, like something like this. Just connect it straight up to the input pipe again. Something like this, so that when these pumps are taking out respectively nitrogen and hydrogen, it currently will just loop back in and go through the system again. And that's because we have to flush out these pipes so that we get pure nitrogen and hydrogen. And yeah, essentially we can just start the pumps, right? Because we're not actually removing anything, we're just cycling it around. So for the time being, I will still let this feed pump run, but we are going to automate those pumps. And if you give me a second, I have a program for this as well stored up. It should be this thing. And let's get the laptop and plop in that ship and just clear and paste it. So this is the controls for both of the pumps, but we are not really interested in controlling the volatiles pump correctly just yet. This first part here is for the nitrogen pump, and what you're looking at is a function. This here reads the temperature of the pipe analyzer evaporation. It says it will be this pipe analyzer right here, which is connected to the nitrogen evaporation. And let's see, what it does is it calculates at this temperature what would be the pressure where volatiles evaporate. And then after calculating that, we just add 120, which is a safety margin, and then we use that as our target, and we simply have a P controller for controlling the pump. So, like I said, the bottom thing is for the volatiles pump, but right now I'm not really interested in controlling that fully correctly. So what we're gonna do is to just set the volatiles pump setting to the same number, and then jump back to start right there, basically discarding this piece of code for right now. And then we can export that and just get the labels up. So we need a pipe analyzer for liquids. That would be this one. So let's call it LPA liquid. And then we also need probably this one is a pipe analyzer for nitrogen. And we also need the pumps. This will be our turbo volume pump for nitrogen. And this will be turbo volume pump for volatiles. There you go. And we can turn on both of these, I guess. And let's start with the pipe analyzer for liquids. It's this one. I don't think it's actually used for the first part of the code, but we'll do it anyway. And then for the volume pump for volatiles, that's the turbo volume pump volatiles, yeah. And then pipe analyzer evap, that would be the pipe analyzer for nitrogen. And if we can find that one, yeah. And then the turbo volume pump for nitrogen, so that's all the way over at TST, let's see, and that's the turbo volume pump nitrogen. There we go. And I think that's good to go. Let's have a look at those. Yeah, it's setting 100. I think I'm gonna slap in some safety on it. I'll explain shortly, but let me just put in, let's see, minimum of R0, and 3 liters for the time being. That way the pump will never exceed 3 liters per tick right now. Now, once we get this running, I will probably remove that safety. But the thing about this system, which is unlike the one I explained in the last video, the pump doing the evaporation is fairly far away considerably from where the evaporation is actually happening. So we will have evaporation here, and we are monitoring this one. But because we have 5 cross counterflow heat exchangers in between the pump and the analyzer reading the data, when the analyzer when the data from the analyzer says that the pump should either speed up or turn down, there will be a delay from the pump actually doing it until the analyzer sees the full effect of it. So that's why doing the pump that far away is a bit risky, but I think as long as we are careful about it and a bit slow, I think it should be fine. But yes, we can probably just turn the pumps on. The reason I'm doing both the nitrogen and the volatiles pumps equal settings for right now is because I really want to have 50-50 flow. So yeah, we can see the throughput here is about 5 moles per tick now on both of these. This is slightly less, but it's fairly balanced. Now it's gonna get more balanced if we just add some volume to this pipe and stuff, but I'm not too concerned about the small offsets we were seeing here. But what's gonna happen now is that the turbo volume pump should manage the pressure in this tank slowly but surely. It will control that pressure so that only nitrogen is evaporating. And if only nitrogen can evaporate here, then as with given enough time, this yeah, you can see it's already happening quite fast. The pipes back here will clear out and be eventually pure nitrogen, and that's how we are achieving the pure nitrogen side, simply by that pump only allowing this tank to evaporate nitrogen. And then step 2 will be to secure more or less pure volatiles, but that relies on one thing, and that relies on this pipe here being mostly volatiles, at least on the liquid side. So we need to essentially first clean out these pipes and make sure it's pure nitrogen all the way. Then we can start to send off nitrogen and remove nitrogen from this system. And when we have almost pure volatiles on this side, we can start to deliberately evaporate just volatiles on the other side. We're starting to reach about 12-13% liquid volume in this pipe now, so I think I will turn off the feeding pump for the time being and just let the gases cycle around. The pressure in the nitrogen evaporation tank is slowly dropping, and remember, we are aiming for just 120 kPa above volatiles evaporation, so it's a very thin margin we're aiming for, but the pipes are slowly clearing out. But because it's fractional through every step here, these last percentages are going to be very, very slow. It seems that our nitrogen pipes have now cleared out and is now pure nitrogen. I'm not entirely sure how long it's been running clean for, because I just leave the computer between these clips and let the system run. But I came back to check and it's all clean nitrogen here now. So that means we are ready to connect this nitrogen line up to the base nitrogen. So let's get some pipes out, and we are not quite ready to connect the volatiles just yet, so we'll have to just route some more temporary pipes around there and do a quick swap right there. And yeah, we are now pumping nitrogen into the base, and the volatiles are still looping back around. There's a good reason for that. If we quickly go and look at the code, I think it's still on the laptop. So I said that this bottom section of the code is for the volatiles pipe. The code here, we aren't currently using it. Like I said, we're just shorting the script for the time being. But if we peek into this code, we see that here we are reading the ratio of liquid volatiles and ratio of liquid nitrogen, and calculating a percentage there. So that's calculating the percentage of volatiles, liquid volatiles, relative to the liquids, not everything in the pipe, just the liquids. And yeah, we have this as we have set here a target for 98% volatiles, and then it's just a P gain for a P controller. Then down here we have we're reading volume of liquid, so that's the total volume, and sorry, that's the total volume of liquids, and that's the total volume of the pipe. And here we have a target for 13%. As a bit of an arbitrary number, I just, like I mentioned before, I like to keep it above 10%. And then we have another P gain. So essentially we have two P controllers right here, and we are just doing the smallest one of whatever these P controls tell us to do. and the smallest number of those goes to the actual volatiles pump. But to get to these percentages, I think we're already at roughly 13%, but we need to have a much higher ratio of volatiles. And real quick, you can see a bit of nitrogen condensing here. That's because a bit earlier I ended up having nitrogen in this oxygen buffer, but that's expected. Well, preferably not, but I saw that coming. That's why we have a one-way valve on the temporary oxygen feed pipe, and it's also the reason why I have a condensation valve on here. It's because I expected that we might get some non-oxygen stuff into this pipe, and I can't really guarantee the temperature in here, so just for safety I have the condensation valve there. But the nitrogen here will eventually just make its way back into the pipe and condense back, so it's not really a big issue. But the real reason we haven't, we're still waiting for that the volatile ratio to go up, is because if you look at this pipe here, even though it's been running equally to the nitrogen pump, it's been running on the same setting for the same amount of time. We can see that it's 6% nitrogen in here, which wouldn't be too horrible for the base, but I would like it to be a lot higher ratio of volatiles, preferably above 99%. And yeah, you can see it's already dropping now that we are actually removing the nitrogen from the system. The nitrogen is slowly being eliminated from here, and we'll essentially just have to give this a bit more time to remove a bit of nitrogen from this system until the volatile ratio is higher in this liquid pipe, because that will ensure that when we evaporate on this side, we will evaporate mostly volatiles. And I want to explain a bit deeper, because when that volatiles pump at the end just pulls gases out, it would normally just keep evaporating nitrogen. Nitrogen will evaporate a lot earlier than volatiles, so without any setup to prevent that, I would still get a lot of nitrogen in this output pipe with volatiles. So the thing we're doing to prevent that is that this one-way valve combo we had back here, because what's actually going to happen is that the nitrogen will obviously evaporate first, but because of this disconnect here, it will eventually run out of nitrogen and be forced to evaporate volatiles. But eventually we will keep evaporating, of course, and more liquid will come over, and that's the clue of having this this other pipe being almost pure volatiles, so that when it runs over to the volatiles evaporation tank, it's nearly 99% volatiles already. And that should be fine with this tank. So because here we are just evaporating nitrogen, so by just keep evaporating nitrogen until it's a very low ratio, we can get a much cleaner volatiles output. Alright, so it's been a few minutes now, but the volatile liquid ratio is now quite a bit higher than the nitrogen liquid, and I modified the code slightly just to see the ratio here, and it's already in terms of just liquids, it's 99.3% volatiles. So I think we can change up the code here to actually use the correct code for the volatile pump. But I will do as I did with the other pump here and make sure it's never goes above 3 liters, just as a just for the caution of it. And then let me just double check this. Yeah, seems about right. Yep, and then we can export that. And even though the nitrogen ratio isn't as clean as I would like, and it should settle down even lower, I think we can disconnect the pump and put it on the actual volatiles, because I don't want to keep concentrating the volatiles in here. So right now the volatiles is actually going, although with about 5% nitrogen, into my fuel, my volatiles pipe. That's just going to fuel. I'm not too concerned about it. With time, this should dilute back down to a very low nitrogen ratio. So yeah, and both pump is running really low right now, and that's also probably likely because I have turned this off. So it's time to start this again and introduce some more mass into the system. Both pumps are running now, but as you can see, it's very uneven. This is running on 0.2 liters and this is running on 0.08 liters. So it's very uneven on the volatiles pump and the nitrogen pump, but that's due to how we initialized this system, because we were running everything back and then only volatiles for a bit. If you look at the pipes going into here, you can see that volatiles is higher represented than nitrogen, but now that we are pumping both the nitrogen and the volatiles out and feeding in with the fresh composter atmosphere, that ratio will slowly even back out to 50-50, and once the entire system here has been balancing out to 50-50 again, we will eventually see the pumps should even out and do the same amount of liters per tick. And I feel like I've mentioned this before, but I feel also like I should really emphasize it. Right now we are processing a tiny bit of mass each tick. It's really nothing, but the key to running a system like this is consistency. Now when it's all up and running and all done, I'm expecting at minimum 10 moles per tick. Probably it will do 20 just fine. We might need 30, I'm not quite sure, but compared to what we're doing now, it will be a lot more. But this system is super fragile to sudden changes, because essentially we are balancing several pipe networks here between somewhere between pollutant not freezing and nitrogen condensing, which is already a really small gap. But we're also balancing this portable tank as an evaporation chamber barely above volatile evaporation. So there's a few different things which is on a razor sharp limit here. So sudden changes will kill a system like this. So that's why I'm super slow and careful. And yeah, once we get this all running, or once this has been properly started up, we will increase the throughput very slowly, bit by bit. Another bit of time has passed, and I have just been letting the system run and settling down. We're still processing really not a lot, but it's much easier to do tweaks and configuration changes while the throughput is low than to wait until it's much higher. So the only thing I have really done is I've added some volume to this pipe, and that's about it. And while I've been mostly just poking around the base, I've just been letting this run, and I thought we could end today's episode by looking at the current status of things. The nitrogen pipe is pure nitrogen, can't complain about that. And the volatiles pipe is 99.4% pure. Can't really get much better than that, but that's plenty good enough for my base. It's not like the nitrogen is lost, which goes in here. It just ends up going a bit more elaborate route through water making and combustion, but it all ends up back in the system anyway. But yeah, so the pumps has been settling down and is very stable. And you see it has two different numbers, but that's obviously because the volatiles evaporation pressure and the nitrogen evaporation pressure is different. But if you take a look at the counterflow and the throughput here, we can see that this one is moving on throughput 1 0.882 moles, and on throughput 2 0.853 moles. So it's very equal, but more importantly it's very equal with this one as well. Here we have 0.86 and 0.881. So despite being two relatively disconnected parallel lines, they move just about the same mass, and these pumps, as you have seen, is controlled by two separate individual calculations based on completely different parameters, but when the system has settled down, they end up moving the same amount anyway. Let's get a quick look at the status over here. It hasn't really changed much. We have a good cold temperature, but that's as expected because we are still moving a very low amount through here. But yeah, I'm fairly happy with the whole thing. I also automated these, so these shut off when they are not needed. Same as we did with this oxygen pipe on that line. And I have of course removed the temporary pipings everywhere. So yeah, I'm fairly happy with this system. Now it's just a very long and time-consuming path to get to 10x or even 20x the throughput here. But I'm just gonna be controlling this pump slightly up and up every now and then until we are at our needed throughput. Unlike the system we looked at upstairs last video, this one can't be managed in the same way. On the system upstairs it's circulating air, so I have a very fine control on how much mass I move through it, but this isn't circulating. It will be generated by the composters, or it is currently being generated by the composters, and it will of course never return there. So the throughput here won't be as stable as it is on the system upstairs, because the generation of hydrogen and oxygen will vary slightly. So the throughput here will have to match whatever is needed and not a constant flow rate. But I think it will manage that just fine. I will probably be tuning the variables and the constants on these chips quite a bit. But yeah, I think it's time to end today's episode. And I thank you for watching. And before I cut you completely off, I have a confession to make. If you would like to build a system like this, don't be discouraged and think it's hard, because this is the third time I make this video.